Hello ladies, it's Mr. Ursel, and today we're going to be looking at the Pythagorean Theorem again. So today's learning target is the exact same as Thursdays. I can apply the Pythagorean Theorem to determine the value of a missing segment length on a right triangle. So again, I have the theorem listed. Pythagorean Theorem, if a triangle is a right triangle, then the square of the length of the longest side is equal to the sum of the squares of the lengths of the other two sides of the legs. And our theorem rule is a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where A and B are the legs of the right triangle and C is the hypotenuse, which is the longest side across from your right angle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw on a right triangle to basically say this is what our triangle would look like. And if we look at that visual on the left, we have a right triangle drawn. It's not 100% perfect, but we have our A, our B, and our C labeled, and our a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So let's go down to our model problems, and I believe it was Lysandra. I'm not 100% sure if I remember, but I believe it was Lysandra who asked, does it really matter where you put your hypotenuse? And yes, it does matter. It always has to be across from that right angle. So C will always be here. So Pythagorean Theorem problem level 1. Find the exact length of the missing side on the right triangle. Well, if we look, we actually want to find our hypotenuse. So we're going to go over. We're going to put a C or an X. It doesn't matter. And the first thing we do always is we write down a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm going to do a squared plus b squared equals c squared. We now go to our image and we label our a and our b. So I'm going to make 3 my a, 5 my b. It doesn't really matter which one you make it as long as you don't make them a c. So we now go back to our rule and we substitute. Into our equation we substitute. So I have 3 squared plus 5 squared equals c squared. Well, now you have to ask yourself, what's 3 squared equal to? 3 squared is equal to 9, because 3 times 3 is 9. What's 5 squared equal to? Well, 5 times 5 is 25. And then I set that equal to c squared. I now add my 9 and my 25, and I get 36. And I set that equal to c squared. My final step to always get rid of that square is to take the square root of both sides. I'm going to take the square root of 36 and the square root of c squared. Please tell me what the square root of 36 is. Well, the square root of 36 is just 6. So 6 is your final answer. I'm going to go to the side to show you the prime factorization to see if I wanted to actually do that by hand. So I went to the side of my paper to do the prime factorization of 36. I broke it up into 6 and 6, and then I broke the 6's up into 2's and 3's. I then put my 2's and 3's under a radical, double on the inside, single on the outside. So 2 times 3 is 6. Now let's go to our next example. Find the length of the missing side on the right triangle below in simplest radical form. The first thing I do is I label my side lengths. The side across from my right angle is my hypotenuse, so that's my C. 1 is my A, and this is my B. I now go and I do my formula of, well, my equation of a squared plus b squared equals c squared. I make my known substitutions. I know 1 is a, so 1 squared. I don't know what b is, so I'm going to just do is b squared. You can make it an x, it doesn't matter. And then I'm going to do my 12 squared. Well, 1 squared is 1. B squared is just b squared, and 12 squared is 144. I need to get b squared by itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. My 1's cancel, so I just get b squared equals 143. I now take the square root of both sides, so I take the square root, and I cannot break apart a 143. I mean, I can, but this is how I would break it apart. So 143. I divided it by 11, and I got 11 and 13. Those are both prime. So I have radical 11 times 13. I can't break it apart anymore. I can't do a double on the inside, single on the outside, so I just get b is equal to radical 143 as my final answer. Let's go into our next problem. Pythagorean Theorem word problem. A certain television is advertised as a 45-inch TV. That's your diagonal length. If the width of the TV is 36 inches, how many inches tall is the TV? So diagonal is your hypotenuse. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just draw a rectangle. And here's my TV. I'm now going to label my diagonal as 45. So I'm going to draw in a diagonal. Perfect, and that's 45. And my width is 36. I want to find out what this side is, or my B. Remember, this is your hypotenuse because it's across from your right angle. So I know a squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm going to make my substitutions. This is your a, that's your b, that's your c. So I have 36 squared plus b squared equals 45 squared. I'm going to evaluate those into my calculator. 36 squared is 1296. B squared is just b squared. And 45 squared is 2025. I want to get b squared by itself. So I have to get rid of this 1296 and bring it to the right-hand side of my equal. To get rid of that 1296, I subtract 1296 from both sides. My 1296 is canceled, so I get b squared equals 729. My final step always is to take the square root of both sides. So I get b equals 27. I typed that into my calculator to get the square root of 729. And that's your final answer. Now let's go on to our next problem where we find the area of a triangle using the Pythagorean Theorem. Remember, this is just a Pythagorean Theorem application. It's one of those things that you can use to help you. So if I look, I know my area formula for a triangle is base times height divided by 2. So base times height over 2. Let's substitute our known information. Well, I know my base is 7 plus 3, so 10. My height, I don't know, so I'm going to put a question mark there. And I know I'm going to divide by 2 at the very end. If I look closer at the image, I do have a right triangle. I'm going to emphasize it in black. And I have a side length of a 3, a question mark, I can put a b there, and my hypotenuse of 5. So I know I can do a squared plus b squared equals c squared to find my height. Let's do it. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. I said 3 was a, so I have 3 squared plus b squared equals 5 squared. What's 3 squared equal to? It's 9. Plus b squared equals 25. I need to get rid of my 9, so I subtract by 9, subtract by 9. And I get b squared equals 16. My final step always is take the square root, and I know the square root of 16 is 4. So b equals 4. That's telling me my height is 4. So I'm going to go back to my image and put a 4 in. And now that I know my height, I'm going to substitute it into my equation. I know my formula, sorry. So now I just do 10 times 4, which is 40, and divide by 2, which is 20. So my area of this triangle is just 20. And that's your final answer. If you have any questions, please email myself or Miss Danielle. And there's no delta math today. Just worry about this edPuzzle. Have a great day, ladies.